Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the best World Championship match that we have had in over a decade. And I don't say that necessarily in terms of the quality of the games, but I do say that in terms of the excitement. It is game number 5 between Jan Nepomniachtchi and Ding Liren. It's 2-2 with both players having won the even-numbered game, 2 and 4, and we just had a rest day for Ding to celebrate and look to build momentum, and for Jan Nepomniachtchi to look to stabilize and stave off Ding, and then try to win the match in the later stages. Also, this is not my house. Obviously, slightly different layout. Please do not be alarmed. We begin with Jan going back to playing the move e4. Now, you might remember, or maybe you don't, Jan played this in the first game, and he won, and it was a Spanish. And then, for some reason that I can't really fully explain, he decided to play d4. But again, such is life. Like, sometimes you pick and choose, and you want to see what your opponent is playing. So he goes back to e4, e5, and we have a Spanish, because Jan likes the Spanish, and Ding likes to play on the black side of a Spanish. We have a6, bishop a4, knight f6. All of this has been played before. Ding Liren is not a Berlin player. Move 3, knight f6, made popular in the 2000 World Championship match between Garry Kasparov and Vladimir Kramnik. That's completely useless information to you. You can use it to win a local trivia night at a bar or something. But this main line is much more popular for Ding, and in particular, Ding really likes to put his d-pawn in the center in one go. Now, I told you in the beginning of the very, very first game that the move Rook E1 is extremely popular. But in the first game, Jan played the move bishop takes c6. And the game got very wild very quickly. He played like Rook E1, and it was a massive, massive surprise. So obviously, Ding Liren in the last several days has spent his entire effort learning this. But besides Rook E1, and then Black playing B5, and then trying to play castles, and then playing D5 in one go, entering the Marshall, Jan plays yet another opening called an anti-marshal, which is just a way to prevent Black from succeeding in playing d5, and that is the move d3. You see, folks, in the mainline Spanish, after b5, bishop b3, castles, and let's say White playing like h3 or c3, Black can play d5 in one move. And you'll notice that White is trying to play d4 in one move. So for something like, if Black plays d6, White can play h3, d4, and so on. But since White has already committed this pawn to d3, even though it's only gone one square, the point is that White has now abandoned the d4 idea, and so now b5 and d6. Now, of course, could Black castle? Probably. I think d6 is considered slightly more accurate. And this position with d3 has been getting a lot more attention recently at the highest level of the game. And the reason for that is people are sort of tired of playing, these kind of like systems. They're kind of tired of playing c3 and trying to deal with the Marshall. Now, already there is an inherent benefit here for Jan. Why is there a benefit? Because Ding would feel significantly more comfortable with his pawn on d5. I think over the course of his career, he has played many, many more games with the pawn on d5, but now Jan does play c3 and h3. h3 is already, once again, a rare move. I think knight bd2 here is more popular. White trying to play a4 and play on the a file is more popular, but he plays h3. And now, in general, Black's ideas with the pawn on d6 involve attacking this bishop, sending it backwards, and taking central space with the move c5, entering what traditionally would look like a Spanish, except White's pawn is normally on d2, and the rook is on e1. So the pawn is back and the rook is there. And that's kind of exactly what happens. We have bishop to b7, and this just kind of looks like a mainline Spanish opening. But it's very complicated. It's extremely complicated. You will notice, by the way, Jan has spent a minute on 10 moves. That's not an exaggeration. He literally has played 11 moves. He's about to play his 12th move very quickly as well, in 4 seconds, by the way. How fast is he, by the way, like physically moving the piece? All of this is clearly his prep. Like, he has prepared this entire thing. And the reason he prepared this entire thing and knows everything that's going to happen is because of this very move d3 all the way back here. By forcing Ding completely out of a Marshall, he is able to predict the next sequence of many moves. And the intricacies of this position are as follows. It's a closed position. How do you know that? Because I just told you, and you should listen to me. Also, because both sides have 8 pawns. So both sides have built up giant fences, all right? Imagine you have a house, you have a fence. Your neighbor also has a fence. Fence, another fence. It's probably quite closed off from each other. You start looking around and thinking like what pieces are interacting. These pieces, this might interact with this might interact with this. This knight controls a little bit of empty space. And if anything, white is going to love to land right there because that square is sort of, it's open. It's very open. None of those pawns really control it, which is why the move bishop g5 is important, because if you trade the bishop for this knight, bishops aren't very powerful in close positions, knights are. And in the long run, let's say this bishop is the only piece surviving in black's position, and this is the only piece surviving in white's position, the knight on d5 will be a god. It will never be touched, ever. And even though the bishop is technically better than the knight, in many positions, the knight on d5 will be an absolute monster, which is exactly why Jan proceeds to capture on f6 on the very next move. One more kind of like very important thing here after a4, is the move a4 in and of itself is very new. It was only played, I think, once, and it was played in a game Firouzja, who you might know. He's a world-famous fashion designer, former grandmaster, and Anish Giri, and this game was played in Miami in 2022, the famous tournament where Hans Niemann said the chess speaks for itself. And then neither of those players said that, though. And in that game, I believe Giri played queen d7, defending the b5 pawn, and he went on to lose, not because of the move queen d7, but because Firouzja is a very good fashion designer. Bishop f6, ab5, ab5, and the following position. Jan has still only spent 2 minutes on 15 moves. That's terrifying. Your opponent hasn't thought at all. Now, the amazing thing is, like, his position is, I mean, it's nothing special. But again, if he can land a piece on the d5 square, that's sort of all he's hoping for. That's essentially it. And the thing about this position for black is he can't really do much. Like, his bishop is bad. This bishop is not great. He's going to have to start going backwards and kind of taking a step back to try to take 2 steps forward. So he plays knight c6, but what does knight c6 do? Well, knight c6 opens up the rook, but it closes off the bishop. Oops, it closes off the bishop. And now, here comes bishop d5. This is the move that Jan has wanted to play all along. So was it worth Ding playing knight c6? Could Ding have done something else? Yeah, try to find a move that does something else. For example, let's say queen b6. Okay, just like bringing the queen out. I'm going to play bishop d5 anyway. And here's the thing. If we trade bishops, right? And okay, but you're trying to get the knight from a5 back. It's really hard to do that. And in that time, I'm going to put my knight on e4, and then I'm going to start some sort of attack. Why am I going to be able to start some sort of attack? Because your pieces are just having a smoke break on the other side of the board. All right? Like, your piece is just not doing anything. This bishop is not doing anything. Okay, black might play g6, bishop g7. I mean, I don't know. So he plays knight c6, and Jan thinks for 8 seconds and plays bishop d5. I mean, this is insanity. Now, I mean, again, Ding is feeling the pressure. He is down 28 minutes on the clock, and his opponent is not thinking. I mean, imagine you're sitting there thinking like 1 minute, 2 minutes, trying to find the best moves, blah, blah, blah. And your opponent is just playing every single move instantly. It's not a good feeling. It's a nauseating feeling, in fact. Now, how do you deal with all this, right? Like, how do you improve your position? Well, rook a1. Ding decides, I'm going to trade the rooks. And the truth is, let's just get to some sort of position. Okay, this is obviously unlikely, but let's just get to a position with no queens, and you know what? No rooks either. Rook a8, bishop a8. White is a little bit better. White is a little bit better because white has an opportunity to potentially, instigate on this side of the board, and because this pin is probably going to last a very, very, very long time. But black's drawing chances, I think, increase quite substantially in a position with less pieces on the board. Ding decides, I'm going to trade rooks, and then I'm going to play queen d7, and I'm going to put my rook over here. And even though Ding is down 33 minutes on the clock, that might look intimidating, his position is completely fine. So he's actually doing a very, very nice job. Well, Jan plays rook e1. Still instantly, but nothing scary. Ding takes the a file. Jan rotates back to d1 completely instantly. Now bishop back to d8. So essentially Ding spends another 7 minutes, and now he's thinking of a best way to reroute. Computer is showing he can play some random rook move, he can like undevelop his bishop. He plays bishop d8 with the intention to play knight e7. When you are under substantial pressure, especially on the clock, in this case 45-minute time advantage for Jan Nepomniachtchi, Ding Liren is thinking to alleviate the pressure with concrete play. Very few people sit there down 45 minutes on the clock and go, I'm just going to play the best move. No, you're always looking for a tangible solution, and as a human, besides looking for a tangible, concrete solution, you also just want your opponent to just stop effing moving. Like, you just want your opponent to not move anymore. And the bad news is Jan still only plays a move in about 90 seconds. And he doesn't necessarily remember that the best move is knight f1. He just might know that it's one of the ideas. He had other ideas, but the idea of going there is that he wants to play knight e3 and then again control that square. So Ding plays knight e7, and Jan plays bishop takes, queen takes, and the battle for the d5 square still rages on. You cannot play the move d5 because you have only temporarily stopped your problems. You have now significantly weakened this pawn. So Jan has everything firing for him here. The bishop on d8 is terrible. The knight on e8 is very, very passive. This rook is, I don't know, it walked into the middle of a forest and is trying to throw a frisbee to nobody. Like, there's nobody there. He's going to have to go across the board and, like, get it. Ding plays bishop b6. Jan still maintains a 44-minute time advantage, and here decides it's time to play for a win with the move h4. All things being equal, he has maximized everything, all the pawn structure in the center, the knight placement, and now he is going to try to take as much space away from Ding as possible by moving his h-pawn to h5. You will notice that for the first time this game, he has actually spent some time. Bishop to b6, h4. 7 minutes spent on that move. It is official. It took Jan Nepomniachtchi 23 moves to actually use his brain in this game. That is crazy. I don't know if his prep was that deep. I don't know if he's just got the world's best poker face. h4, and black cannot stop white from playing h5, because if you do that, you immediately grant me a target. And Ding spends some time, plays queen c6, and Jan plays h5. This subtle maneuver on the same side here just completely restricts the enemy knight, and it doesn't just restrict the enemy knight, it also improves chances in all endgames. Why? Because the black structure cannot move, and so it's going to be a lot harder for black to do anything. Anything you commit will lead to weaknesses, and I'm still going to try to play knight h4, knight f5, and get to the light squares. If white can play this and put a knight on d5, white wins from a positional standpoint. So it's time for Ding Liren to no longer sit around doing nothing. He needs to play c4 and let the comeback begin. Ding Liren fires into white's center with the move c4. His dark squared bishop has come alive. If he gets rid of that knight and white does not get a knight to d5, black is going to be completely fine. In fact, black might even be better because white overextended with his h-pawn and because black has an open a-file. So the move c4 is on the board. Jan thinks and plays the move d4. That weakens the e4 pawn, but it's not capturable because of various tactics like this, like this, like this, like this. So you cannot take. Ding plays e takes d4, knight takes d4, and plays the move queen to c5. And this officially is the moment in the game where Jan Nepomniachtchi has doubled up his opponent's time and has the best position that he's had the entire game. And he messes it up. And the position drops nearly down to equal. It was better apparently for Jan to start with queen f3 to try to set up various discovered attacks, and then if you try to blockade him, there is knight g4 to try to escape, to try to kick out the queen, and then you can try to play for e5. Queen f3 was apparently a little bit better, because after queen to g4, which looks, of course, very natural, trying to infiltrate, there is this incredible move by Ding, queen to e5. And suddenly Jan has nothing. Officially, for the first time this game, he has nothing. He has absolutely nothing. And that is why he tries to kick the queen out of the center of the board. And personally, I don't know. I think he played queen g4 completely anticipating queen e5. But the point is that now this infiltration doesn't actually do anything. Black will simply capture on d4 and we will trade all the pieces. So queen e5 and Ding Liren is back in the game for the first time. That is the lowest the eval has been in a while. Knight to f3 tries to kick the queen out. Queen e6. You cannot trade queens here. Because as I said, once black relieves the pressure, it is black who is probably going to call the shots. With the bishop, with the open rook on the file, with the fact that this pawn is actually probably quickly becoming a liability. So Jan plays knight f5. Ding can play two things here. He can take the knight, but he can also rotate over and take nothing. And the queen guards everybody. Queen's like, yo, come here. Queen's like huddling everybody together during a basketball game. All right? That's also a possibility. In this position, though, he did in fact take on f5. E takes f5 is a double attack on the queen. And now, do you play queen f6 or do you play queen to d7? And Ding plays queen f6. Now, he could have played queen d7. Queen d7 was a better move. It guards all of the back infiltration, and it also stops white from advancing with the move f6. And if you try to move out of the way in order to play the move f6, I can first of all actually play f6 myself, but if any super grandmaster plays f6 in this position, the hand of God will come down and slap them. So probably you can rotate the bishop to f6. You can also play queen d8 and, you know, try to put the queen on f6 later. But queen f6. But now Jan centralizes. Rook b8. This has been stopped. And Jan plays rook e2, just a simple improving move, seeing what Ding wants. Ding slides the bishop forward a square. Nothing cooking. And now, how does white tip the first domino to try to finally apply some fatal pressure on black, not just cosmetic? Well, you start looking around. What do you have that they don't? And what you have that they don't is this. And you will notice a long time ago I told you knight versus bishop, right? The knight could end up on that square. It's a light squares, dark square situation. Every single piece is on a light square. This bishop is entirely useless. And Jan plays g4, and this is very bad news. Ding now bolts out of the f6 square, realizing that blockade was futile. He had to put his queen on d7. Jan slides gently forward to d5, applying pressure in a multitude of directions. The queen is a cancerous piece on d5. It is unbeatable on the d5 square. King to f8 is played here to prevent rook e7. The idea here is that black wants to go here and here. If black can get the queen off the board, he will be fine. But had he had played that, rook to e7 would have been played. That's why king f8 was played. In this position, Jan goes full Terminator and plays king to f1 with two ideas. The first idea being that anything that gets taken on the g file will no longer be a check, which will allow him to move forward effortlessly. The second thing is if the f-pawn ever comes to the party, the bishop will not be pinning the pawn to the king. So king f1 is a useful move. Black is officially out of moves. Black has officially got 20 minutes on the clock to make 5 very important remaining moves. Rook c8 played to try to trade the queen off. Rook to e4. Rook to b8 back. And Jan has arrived. Jan has arrived with the move g5. Will Ding Liren be able to fight him off? H takes g5. Rook to g4, looking to collect. In this position, Ding maybe had one last chance to not capture, but he captures. Jan Nepomniachtchi immediately goes to collect the material. f6 looks like it holds everything together. But unfortunately, there is the absolutely brutal, and this is why the h-pawn was so important. Remember, he played h4, h5, because knight h4 to try to get in here, and if you take, it looks like there's absolutely nothing. But the h-pawn is the final domino to fall, and that's it. If you take, it's made in a few moves, queen g8 and rook g7. What an absolutely ridiculous idea. Knight h4 against all odds. It looks like black created a giant barrier to repel the knight. There was no barrier. The horse has legs. It can jump. And that is why, instead of that, Ding tries to go for counterplay against the king. White's king is completely blockaded on the light squares. This bishop, unable to do anything, both pawns far advanced, and like every good strong grandmaster, Jan knows an attack does not need to culminate with the head of the king being held in your hand. He is more than happy to trade the queens, because at the end of the road is a winning endgame. And that h-pawn is going to become a massive asset. It's either going to win you a pawn, and the f-pawn will be the pass pawn, or pawn takes, and this comes through. And so f6, g6, take, take, take. And in this position, one final thing, you actually cannot rush. If you try to rush and win the game, there is this completely ridiculous turn of events that might happen where it looks like white is queening, but instead of queening, white will sacrifice the rook for the pawn and actually draw this game. I mean, it's completely nuts. Jan is a strong player. He does not fall for that. He plays rook h6. Red carpet for the king to infiltrate. Checkmate is coming. And in this position, Ding Liren resigned Game 5 of the World Championship. And Jan took a 3-2 lead. So for the second time in a row, Game 1 and 5, we have a Spanish. We have a sideline not letting Ding get to his marshal. And the second time, Jan has a very pleasant position, and this one was never in doubt. He made one inaccuracy not to claim his advantage, but the entire game revolved around this, and the final dominoes to fall was this fantastic, sophisticated h4, h5 idea, followed a little bit later by this idea to play g4. I mean, this is incredible stuff. This is like a masterclass of same-side attacking chess. He should be very proud of this game, and it's match on. We've had 3 decisive games in the first 5. It's 3-5 Nepo. He has struck back. He has not looked to stabilize the ship with a draw. That was just about as smooth of a win as imaginable, and Ding has some soul-searching to do in his e4, e5 Spanishes. I'll see you for game number 6. Tomorrow's recap will be delayed, by the way, by like 2-3 hours. I will not be present in front of a computer when the game will conclude. I've tried my best, but probably won't. So stay off the internet for 2-3 hours tomorrow. It's Sunday. I don't know. What do you do on Sunday? Go outside. Go for a picnic. Get out of here.